Good morning, everyone. Morning. At Atlassian, something we spend a lot of time thinking about is the future of work. And more importantly, though, when we think about the future of work, we think about the future of teamwork. Because as you may have realized, Atlassian is all about teams. We are passionate about teams. It's called everything that we do. When we went public 2 years ago, we chose team as our stock ticker. We have team spelled in very large letters on the top of our George Street rooftop. If you happen to be one of the tall buildings in the city, you can see it. And our staff even go to great lengths, enduring the ridicule of strangers, to spell out team in a public place. So why is that? Well, we believe that teams are the cornerstone of human achievement. It'll be teams that cure cancer. It's going to be teams of people that colonize Mars. It's going to be teams that alleviate global poverty. Now, we believe the days of the lone genius are dead. The days of the lone genius are dead. And this is true even amongst awards like the Nobel Prizes that have historically celebrated the lone genius. Do you know over the last 20 years, more teams than individuals have won Nobel Prizes? It's going to be teams that solve the problems of the future. But you and I both know that most teams are capable of way more than they currently deliver. Too often teams are held back by poor practices, poor tools, or poor team culture. And Atlassian's mission is to change all that. Our mission is to unleash the true potential of every team. Now, as part of this, we're continually searching for and looking for high-performance teams. And after 15 years of research, after talking to hundreds of customers and thousands of teams, what if I told you we'd found the perfect team? A team that's continually evolving its processes and make sure that every single team member is the most efficient that they could be. We searched hundreds of teams around the world for this perfect team. Now, I'm going to go through a list of their attributes of this team, and I want to know who in the audience, which of your teams share those same attributes. So as I read them out, I want you to think about your teams back at the office, and do you share these attributes? Do you have clear processes? Do you have strictly defined and measured outputs? Do you manage risks in order to eliminate or reduce variability? Do you have clearly identified and structured roles in your team? Do you have a smart and strong leader? Do you have personalized and customized tools, personalized for each job and for each person? And do you have a stable, unchanging team? So think about that. How many of your teams back in the office? So hands up if you had all 7 attributes. Oh, no one. What about 6? A few people. Hands up. 5? 4? Wow, okay. Can you guess where they're from? Amazon, Google, Disney, Netflix, Atlassian. Well, here they are. This is the team I'm describing. It's over 120 years ago in Pennsylvania, and this is a team of factory workers who shoveled iron. And they were the subject of a very, very famous experiment in productivity improvement, and that transformed the way that they worked. This team introduced 8 shovels, specialized and optimized for the tasks that each individual did. They identified that the optimal shovel weight was 21 pounds, which sounds a lot to me. I don't know about you, but shoveling 21 pounds sounds a lot, but that was their optimal shovel weight for that particular team. They scheduled specific breaks. So they used to take ad hoc rest breaks, and now they took specific breaks to keep them fresh throughout the day and stop them from fatiguing. And all of these efficiency changes quadrupled their productivity. They went from shoveling 12 tons a day per person to 47 tons. Now, it wouldn't be great if you could quadruple your team's efficiency. Now, for those of you doing the maths at home, that's shoveling every 10 seconds for 12 hours a day. So, you'd be glad you didn't live 120 years ago in Pennsylvania. So what should we learn from those workers? How can we optimize our teams for efficiency in the same way that they did? Well, the answer is we absolutely shouldn't. Because those steelworkers, that lived in a static and predictable world. Their jobs were stable from one day to the next. And they walked into that factory each and every day and did the same thing. And because their world moved slowly, optimizing for efficiency was absolutely the right thing to do. But who here goes into work every day knowing exactly what they're going to do? Who here has the same to-do list every day, every week, every month? Who here goes into work every day and their day goes exactly according to plan? It's basically none of us, right? And that's because we live in a dynamic and changing world. And change is coming faster than ever before. And it's almost impossible to predict what's coming next. And you only have to look back 10 years to realize it was very hard to predict the future. Could you possibly imagine a world where only 10 years ago, before we had cameras on our mobile phone, that we take 1 trillion photos a year? And we take 1 trillion photos a year today just on our cell phones. So that's a hell of a lot of selfies. Speaking of selfies, smile. Let's make that 1,000,000,001. What about, could you imagine a world when an anonymous person creates an entirely new class of currency, currently worth about $200 billion, which is more than the GDP of New Zealand? What about a world where machines are better at recognizing images than we are? Not only can they tell the important differences between labradoodles and fried chicken, but they're also better at recognizing disease than humans are, helping to save lives. And not only is technology vastly improving diagnostics, it's actually changing the way that we do surgery. And 3D printers are helping to print organs which help surgeons to perform life-saving surgery. So all of these changes would have been impossible to predict only 10 years ago. And we live in a magical era, truly magical era. And I'm amazed at what's possible today. And I'm really excited by what you in the audience and your startups are doing today to change the world. Now, I could spend hours talking about this, but what does it mean for teams and teamwork, which is what our mission at Atlassian is? How does that affect us? Well, it means we can no longer optimize for efficiency. In today's complex world, we need to adapt. We need to move away from centralized decision-making and empower all your teams. And that means everyone in an organization needs to get better at making decisions. Now, speed matters. It's not about perfect decisions, it's about quick learning cycles, as we just heard. It's about learning, getting feedback, and improving all the time. Now, we've been indoctrinated from a very young age to think that variability is a bad thing. It's not. We actually need to embrace the unknown, experiment, and learn from failure. Now, the days where the boss is the smartest person in the room, they're long gone. My team tells me that every single day. Teams these days, as you know, are composed of specialists that know way more about their domain-specific expertise than their boss does. And so the role of a leader used to be the smartest person in the room. Now it's actually to have the right questions. Now, change is coming thick and fast. It used to be that you would form teams that would live for a long time. In these fast-paced world, we saw the last speaker talked about moving desks once a month. Teams are forming and changing faster than ever before, and as humans, we need to build trust and trust relationships as a key part of building teams. And remember the last time you bit your tongue, not wanting to rock the boat? Rather than avoiding conflict, we need to embrace it. We need to harness the positives that come from diverse opinions and perspectives in order to make the right decisions. So how do we achieve this? How do we move from the management practices that were largely built in a time when the world was static and predictable to those that help us in today's amazing but crazily unpredictable world? So how do we make this change? Well, at Atlassian, we have a really distinctive viewpoint about this, and this viewpoint has been honed by 15 years of working with teams around the world. We have over 100,000 customers in almost 170 countries, so we've honed our perspective on teams from working with them. And we believe the best way to adapt, and the best way for you to adapt to this changing world, is to work open. So when teams are open, they build trust faster, they create stronger connections, and they operate at higher speeds. And so when information flows around your organizations freely, it allows everyone the right context to unlock their creative ideas. So how do we do this? Like, it sounds great. What do I mean by open? First, it's an open way of working. Now, the speed that an organization can operate, the speed that your organizations can operate at, that's determined by how fast information flows from one part of your organization to another. And I'll say this again, the speed at which your organization can operate at is the speed at which information flows from one part to another. But too often, in your organizations, information's held in silos, or it's hoarded, it's hidden from the people that really need it. And we need information to be open by default, and when it is, when we have an open way of working, then teams can adapt to the changing world and make better decisions. We need an open way of thinking. Now, do you remember the last time you had a good idea? Like a really good idea? Or at least you thought you did until you discussed it with your team and realized that together with your team you could come up with something way better. And this is what happens when we have an open way of thinking, when we invite alternative viewpoints, encourage people to challenge us directly. Now, when we create safe environments where we can have creative conflict, ideas can come from anywhere, and that's where we can tap into the genius of the entire team. And lastly, an open way of being. Now, too many people leave half of themselves at home thinking they need to be someone else at work. Many of you have a whole self, and then you have a work self. Now, the best workplaces, the ones with low attrition, the ones that win awards, the workplaces that are truly doing innovative things, they create environments and workspaces for people to bring their whole selves to work. And they invite that diversity of thought and opinion and create opportunities for everyone's voice to be heard. And when you work in or you operate an organization where everyone feels empowered to bring their authentic selves to work, that's when you truly unleash the potential of every team. Now at Atlassian, openness isn't a new concept for us. It's like part of our DNA from the very beginning. And in fact, if you walk around any of our offices, you'll see that one of our core values is open company, no bullshit. Something we hang proudly for all to see. The Americans don't quite understand it as much as the Australians do. But this belief doesn't just live on a poster. It's central to our company and culture. It's central to everything we do and how we build our own teams. It's also central how we build our products for our customers and how we help you work open if you're a customer of ours. If you use our products, if you use Confluence, you know that it helps teams to surface information and make better decisions by being transparent. If you use Jira, which is our project management software, we know that by managing projects in the open, you can make faster decisions. But we also know it's not just about product, it's also about the practices that your team and your companies need to have. Now, when Atlassian started 15 years ago, there were only two of us, Mike and myself. In that 15 years, we've gone from 2 people to 2,000 people in 8 offices around the world. And along the way, we've had to continually evolve our practices and the way that we work. Now, as part of our belief in working open, what we've tried to do is codify those best practices so that every team in Atlassian can benefit from the learning we've had along that time. And after 2 years of codifying these best practices, sharing them and using them internally, we packaged them up and shared them with you. Because, as I mentioned earlier, our mission is to unleash the potential of every team, not just the teams at Atlassian, but every team out there in the world. And so, a little while ago, we created the Atlassian Team Playbook. And I want to talk to you today because I want to give you something really tangible and concrete that you can go back and do with your teams. And you may think from the topic, the future of work, that I get up and talk about as a technology solution to your problems, but actually, I think the big change that we've got is how your teams are going to work. And that's why we're passionate at Atlassian, is we believe teams will be the cornerstone of how productivity happens, and they're behind all the improvements you're making in your organizations. And this team playbook was something really concrete and tangible you can go back and do next week with your teams. So this playbook is used not only every day by 2,000 Atlassians, it's used by companies around the world, tens of thousands of them, from Red Bull to Virgin to ANZ Bank, all using this already. So what is it? And I'll show you a link to download this later. It comprises 2 things. The first of them is a set of exercises to find out the areas that your team needs to improve. And we call this a health monitor. Now, this is kind of like your fitness instructor giving you a set of drills to work out the areas you're really strong at and the areas of weakness that you want to improve on. It's kind of like a scorecard. And just like we know each of your teams are different, we have a scorecard for 3 different types of teams. One for leadership teams, one for service teams like customer support or IT or customer-facing teams, and one for project or product teams. They actually have different attributes that they need to optimize for. And we also have a set of exercises to improve. Once you realize where you need improvement, we have a set of exercises called plays. And this is kind of like your fitness instructor giving you specific exercises to build a specific muscle that you need to improve on. Now let me take you through the health monitor. So after examining hundreds of teams, we've identified the attributes needed for high-performing teams. And in this example, let's use project teams. So the health monitor is an exercise where the teams rate themselves on each of these 8 attributes and come to a shared understanding about where the team is. Sounds simple, right? You're surprised we've actually had to codify steps to do this to make sure that teams do it effectively. So firstly, it's a 1-hour exercise. This is not something you need to take a 1-week offsite, go to a retreat somewhere, do some incantations. Like, this is something you can do on Monday morning at 9 a.m. with your team. It has to be simple for people to do it. It's completed as a team. Because we believe in diverse opinions and thought, we know that everyone has a different lens by which they view team performance. Every person in your team needs to be involved. It's not just sort of the leaders of the team to get together and opine on how well they're doing. Everyone is asked to rate on a red, yellow, green scale. Every single person, and the votes count equally. And we rate individually and then share your results. If you sort of go around the room, there's a lot of groupthink we find that happens. And so you rate each of those attributes individually, then share and have the discussion. And then finally, aggregate that into a team view, which identifies your strengths and areas for improvement. Now, it sounds really kind of simple, and why would you bother doing it? Of course, your team knows how well they're operating, but I can tell you from experience that it's eye-opening when you sit down with your team and try and get to a shared understanding about where your team's strengths and weaknesses are. Once you've done that, identified the areas you need to improve, you can select one of the plays or exercises that helps build the new muscle. Now, there are 26 plays. We're adding more all the time. And these aren't theoretical things. These are very concrete, practical things that you can often do in only a few hours in order to work better as a team. So I'll take you through a real-life example about how we do this at Atlassian. We recently formed a new team called the Jira Server team to work on the Jira Server product. And back in March, when this team formed, when they first came together, they decided to run a health monitor. It's kind of part of our rhythm of forming new teams. Is the first thing you do is do a health monitor. Now, no surprises, as a new team, they had a few areas that they could improve, indicated by the fact that they were 100% red or yellow. There is a green, they just didn't get it. Now, the important thing is, if they hadn't done this health monitor, they wouldn't have known that they had these problems. So many teams, I don't know if you've been on teams where you think you're going really well and then you roll off a cliff and then you go back and think, why did we do that? And the signs were there all along. So they ran this at the start and they identified the areas to improve. Instead of panicking, they refocused their efforts. They looked at the areas they were struggling and selected a few plays. Give some examples. One of the plays is roles and responsibilities. This is when you don't necessarily have a clear understanding of who's doing what. And because they're a new team, like, it's understandable that they didn't have all the shared understanding of who was doing what. And so having this discussion and being explicit about the accountabilities, the responsibilities, ensures that no one steps on each other's toes and the frustration that comes from that. And more importantly, that everything was getting done and things were getting dropped between the cracks. Again, it sounds very simple, but you're surprised by having that conversation on what you elicit. They also worked on an elevator pitch. And the elevator pitch is a simple document to align people about what they give you a shared understanding about what you're doing. We actually found the number one thing across all these attributes that people fail on is a shared understanding of the team's purpose across everything. And so an elevator pitch allowed them to have a shared understanding across the team about what they're working on. Now roll forward to April, and all the plays had the desired effect. The team ran the health monitor, and there was a lot of improvement. But team health isn't static, and we always want to improve. So in April, they determined a different set of plays that they wanted to run. In this case, let me talk about the trade-off sliders. Now, it's great to see a team. Most teams have some sort of mission they're trying to achieve. But as they go along, there's trade-offs you need to make. I'm going to trade off speed versus time to market. I'm going to, like, all the sort of nuanced trade-offs that you're going to have to make. Now, if your team can all make the trade-offs in the same way, your team's going to run a lot faster than if every person has a different set of sliders and tries to make different decisions. And so the trade-off sliders is a play that you can run. And they also run the demo trust. So a demo trust is where you do a mock-up or a demo of your final solution, and you run that past stakeholders such as your management team, dependencies, so everyone has a clear view about what you're going to deliver. This avoids those problems where you spend months building something and then your stakeholder or the person you're trying to produce for doesn't agree with the output. You can get it done a lot earlier. Now, after running those plays, they rerun the health monitor again and seen a dramatic improvement. And I know that this team is continually evolving and they are still identifying areas that they can improve. So don't just take my word for it. Luke from Safety Culture uses health monitors to scale their business and continually improve the way their teams collaborate. I think Luke is speaking this afternoon here at the conference. And best-selling author Dr. Jason Fox said that team health checks and the plays have become one of his team's favorite rituals and ensure that their teams are focused and effective. So if you want to experiment with the ways of working open and the benefits of working open, I'd encourage you to head back to your office and engage in a team health monitor exercise. You'll be amazed what you'll learn from having candid conversations with your team about your strengths and weaknesses. Again, it sounds really simple. At Atlassian, we're pretty comfortable with doing sort of simple, boring stuff that works. This is will transform the way that your teams work. And more importantly, beyond team playbook and team health monitors, I'd love if you can go back to your organizations and evangelize the new way of working open, being open and transparent with information so that people can make decisions, being open with the way of working to allow people to bring their whole selves and to work so that they feel comfortable at work, and also having an open dialogue and discussion to tap into the diversity. There's no point having a diverse team if you don't tap into their diverse opinions. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the conference.